All right, it looks like it's about 8:47, so we're going to go ahead and get started this morning. I will give a quick introduction of myself. My name is Erin Anglin. I'm from East Central College. I'm the Executive Director of Academic Support and Learning Center.
I am Beth Rosema. I'm an Assistant Professor of Biology and the Instructional Assessment Committee Co-Chair.
And I'm Dana Regal. I am a Research Analyst in the Institutional Research Department.
Yay. So today's presentation, we are going to talk about how East Central College navigated the challenges in developing, mapping, and assessing institutional student learning outcomes by reviewing data captured through Canvas and the use of rubrics. It's fascinating stuff. The Institutional Assessment Committee collaborated with Dana's IR department and developed unified interactive data which will help our next steps in the use of ISLO data collected to assess general education at East Central College. So from today's presentation, you guys will find out where we started, why we did, what we did, how we did it, and what we're going to do next. So we put some quotes up here. Give you a second to read them. You know, in higher education, we talk about all the time about assessing student learning, but is that what we're really doing? Is it? Oh, you will. And then as we talk today, I want you all to think about how we can frame our conversations towards achievement. Look for how students demonstrate what we expect from them as a result of taking our courses and going through our programs. And then levels of assessment. So ISLOs and rubrics. East Central College 4 years ago started at the HLC Assessment Academy, and from there we developed new institutional student learning outcomes. With the use of these new student learning outcomes, at the same time it coincided with our new strategic plan, and then we also had a student experience statement that fed into our strategic plan and our learning outcomes. So that helped frame our rubrics for student learning. And then ultimately we asked, what do we want our students to know when they leave East Central College? And so we kept that question in mind as a frame for how we developed our outcomes, which led to the development of our rubrics.
At about the same time that our institutional student learning outcomes were being developed and we were working on performance indicators, we switched to the Canvas learning management system, which gave us a great opportunity to collect data more globally instead of trying to get it on sheets of paper from people. We were able to use common rubrics or common lines in rubrics to capture that data. So ISLO assessment, of course, is not the only assessment going on in a course. There are a lot of assignments, but there's a good chance that there's one assignment that the instructors feel like is the signature assignment. And if that also fits in with something we really hope students come out of the college knowing, then we can use that to measure the institutional student learning outcome as well. And so without asking faculty to do any extra work, we can get more data out of the same things we're already doing. And they're really important things that we hope that our students are able to do by the end of the course. I think I went backwards. There we go. So we have 3 levels of assessment: course level assessment, department level assessment, and institutional assessment, and sometimes those are all in the same wonderful signature assignment. We have comprehensive reviews that we do of our programs at the college, and we have departmental assessments that are part of that. We also have our ISLO assessment as a piece of that. It goes along with all the other parts, and we also assess our own assessment. We talk about what we've done, we show off what we've done, and we analyze it in small annual bits. That's the Annual Assessment Report and Plan is the AARP, and the Comprehensive Review every 5 years. We look at the whole program or department, defined differently depending on which one it is, to see what our students are achieving and that we're hitting all of these different pieces as often as is feasible. So we have rubrics integrated into Canvas, and they're bigger than the course. They're actually institutional rubrics that can be added to any course, and they measure ISLO performance across the curriculum, and we have co-curricular events that are also using it. Faculty have piloted all of the rubrics that we have, all of the performance indicators have been used somewhere at some point. We've collected the data through Canvas. It becomes an Excel spreadsheet, and then there's some magic, and it's visualized in Power BI. And departments can request reports of what their students are learning, how it fits into the big picture. We can use all this data to tell our story about what students are learning, where there are still opportunities for growth, which things we think that they should be learning at the college that they're not quite getting yet, or that we're not measuring in the right place to capture that they are learning what we hope that they are learning. We also have elution products that we use at the college, and that's not my thing, but it is a really great way to collect data, and it allows us to match students and scores up with demographics. So it kind of links Canvas and the student data together. So we have a pretty web page that we'll go to in a moment, and you can see, and I really actually mean that because it's a public dashboard, you can see how our students are performing on these institutional student learning outcomes. And you want the web page, right?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Please hold.
I can use the PowerPoint if not.
It's not that hard. It's just like my classroom. So when you need to click on stuff, you need to click.
Okay.
And that is.
Do you want to click on it? Will you find the web page for me, and then I'll start. So whenever we, after they all started collecting the data, and they came to me and said, we want to see this in Power BI. We had already been using Power BI for a couple other things at the institution in order to show data. And when they came to me, of course, they came with this huge wish list. Like, I want to see, you know, all of this outcome data, and I want to see it with all of the stuff that's in Colleague, which is our system that we use. So we started that. I started that way and took it to our committee. And after kind of looking at it, you know, a couple challenges we faced were, okay, well, who has access to this data? You know, we could look pretty close at the student level data at this point. Who has access? You know, what do we want to show? You can look at the course, and you can look at the individual student level. So at that point, we decided to scale it back a little bit. We're like, okay, let's just look at the data that we're getting from the ISLO reports. Let's just look at that data because we want everybody to be able to see that. So let's start there, and then we'll build something else to go with it. And that's where this came in. So this is not the data that's matched up with any of our student demographic data. I'll get to that part in just a second. This is just our ISLO data that we're collecting. We wanted to look at 2 years worth of data because that's all we had at this point. That's one of the future decisions is what time frame are we going to look at in the future as we collect more data. So this first page is just a simple show of all the data that we collected by category. The percent of those that are scoring at 4, which we have as advanced in our rubric, 3, 2, 1, and then no evidence. It shows the number of assessments and then the number of unique students because we know that we have some students that are taking multiple assessments. Will you go to the next page? Sorry. Thank you for running it for me so I can talk in front of this. This one breaks it down a little bit more by individual ISLO category. So we can pick a category and then we can look at the actual outcome. If you can see on the top there, like right now, communication is the only thing that's selected. It has, again, the number of assessments, the number of unique students, but you do have the ability to select it by term. So that way we're not having, 6 different dashboards for 6 different semesters. We have the ability to look at it as a whole, because at this point we don't have like a ton of data. So we do kind of want to look at it all as one. But everybody, because this is on our public website, everybody has the ability to look at it by semester if they want. Yep, go ahead to the next page. And again, the same data, but it's just broken down into a different way of looking at it. Because that's the thing, is not everybody wants to look at it the same way. I'm sure a lot of you know that already. And so we tried to make it kind of fit everybody's mold. This one breaks it down by semester, and then this bottom, this rubric score trends, looks at those that, the percent of those that score a 1 and 2 and a 3 and 4. What's particularly interesting about this one is, as we created this and as people started looking at it, one of the challenges we one of the, I guess, I don't know if it's a barrier or challenge that we came up with was, okay, well, that's great, but are 3 and 4 the expectation? 4 is advanced, but is that the expectation as they're taking that particular assessment? So that's something that we do need to address in the future. Looking at it as 1 and 2, it kind of makes you think 1 and 2 is not good, but that might not be the case. That might be the expectation for that. And again, that might be something that we're looking at when we get down to the individual course or the individual department or the individual assessment maybe. Go ahead to the next one. And then the last page on the public dashboard is just an opportunity, again, same data, but just a way of looking at it differently. This is a way to look at it by the individual indicator. And as you can see on that bottom chart, you've got a lot of blanks there. That's just because we don't have data for that point. But we want people to see that. We want to see that fill in as we collect more data over time.
They're different.
Yeah, they change as you click on it. And you can see, like, for that particular one, go back up to CM2. We didn't have data for CM2 for fall 20, spring 21, and summer 21. So you can see those gaps there. I think that's good for the institution to see those gaps because then they can see where, okay, we need to focus on this. Why are we not collecting data on this if this is something we want to make decisions on? And go to the next one. Oh, that's on the PowerPoint. Sorry. Yep, sorry. I want the PowerPoint back. Yeah, sorry. Thank you for driving. You probably just close it. No,
Feeling fine?
it's not moving.
Let me talk to it. How about now?
This was just in case the website didn't pull up. Okay, so this is a page you didn't see on the public website. So after we got the public one up and running, and yes, we have some work to do on there, some decisions to make, we want to see it in more detail, but that is not for the public eye to see because we want to pull in, well, we have already pulled in student demographic information, Pell eligibility, and then a big topic of interest is how many credits did they complete? Everybody's very interested in seeing, okay, where are they at when they're only at, 0 to 14 credits versus where they're at later in their institutional journey. So those are the types of things that we're going to focus on as we look at the more detailed dashboard. And that's something, though, that obviously won't be on the public eye. And the challenges we're kind of facing there is, we do have Power BI, but we don't have an institutional license. So we need to kind of make some decisions there on, okay, well, who gets access to it? Do we want to get an institutional license? Or, should this be kind of only to a certain group of people and then, kind of screenshotted, for those that want to see the other stuff. So those are the things that we do need to address, which is why we kind of scaled it back and did the public one first. And that's what we're currently working on. This was just a little kind of snippet of what's to come, though. Like, this is just a comparison for critical thinking, the individual outcomes for those that have 0 to 14 successfully completed credit hours versus 45 plus successfully completed credit hours. And you can kind of just see at a glance, like you do have a little bit more, or quite a bit more, 3s and 4s there. But that's where we get to that question again, okay, well, what does that mean? And so eventually, you know, in the real version of this was just a snippet, you know, we can look at it by individual course or individual assessment. So that's where we're at right now. We're not finished with it, but it's definitely, we've made a lot of progress, I think, in the last year, for sure. So there you go.
So one of the things Dana said was comparing new students to later students, where we've embedded these assessments into individual courses, and students take courses at the beginning of their college career, obviously. They're probably not going to have mastered all of our things we hope they learn before they graduate as soon as they start, unfortunately. So we are expecting less mastery at the beginning. We're expecting more 1s and 2s in the students who have fewer credits, and hopefully more 3s and 4s in the students who have more credits. And I have been so excited about curriculum mapping for 3 years. It's been a long 3 years, so it's hard to know, but finally I got to see this is a pathway of a imaginary English student who didn't take any electives, and this shows where they will get assessed for which of our institutional student learning outcomes at which point in their career. And so you see there's some stuff at the top, and then as it goes down, it gets a lot more communication and critical thinking assessments. And it's not perfect because not every student is going to take every class in exactly the same order, but this is really cool. Wouldn't this be really cool to look at that student's scores on the different performance indicators as they move through their college career? Now, it would be a FERPA violation if I put the student's scores up, and it is just an imaginary student, but this is where we're going. And as we started looking at this, we did notice gaps, like there's really not a lot of assessment data being collected for the personal and professional development. We've only been collecting data since the summer of 20. Do you remember the summer of 20? Okay, so we don't have a ton of data yet. There are people who have thought about collecting, and they're still working on what they want their signature assignment to be. People are still validly forgetting to submit their data. We're still having discussions about how we're going to assess anything in our freshman seminar class. Social responsibility seems like it would be a great thing to assess in co-curricular events, but how collecting that data is going to look hasn't quite been figured out yet. So students are learning this stuff that looks like gaps here, but we're still trying to figure out exactly how to capture that and put it onto a nifty little colorful map like this. But that goes along with the beginning versus end students and the differences in scores. And it's kind of ugly, but this is my masterpiece. But I'll let Erin talk about how far the institution has come.
And I think what using this data, using Power BI, collecting this data has allowed us is really the opportunity to assess our assessment. It's really given us an opportunity to look at our institutional student learning outcomes, our performance indicators, and go, well, do we need 8 performance indicators under personal and professional development? If we're not collecting data, if we're not capturing student information from any of those, okay, let's go back to the drawing board. Let's look at this again. So I think over the past 4 years, from the start of our HLC Assessment Academy journey to our graduation this previous month ago. We have learned along the way, and this was our final project. This was our masterpiece. This is how far we have come. We have taken our mission, our vision, our values, our student experiences, and we have grown. We have come up with institutional student learning outcomes, performance indicators under those outcomes, a way to assess for student learning, how to assess those with our AARPs, our annual assessment reports and plans, and then our 5-year comprehensive reviews, and then our curriculum maps, our colloquies, which are used as faculty opportunities to work within a performance or an outcome and the performance indicators as a group, as a department, to then understand where do our courses fit? What performance indicators fit within our courses? What are our students learning? Are we 1s? Are we 2s? Are we 3s? Are we 4s? And what is the expectation? Is the expectation in an introduction course to be a 4? Or is it to start the learning process, start the journey to get to that 4? What do we want our students to know when they leave East Central College? And so we have created this beautiful masterpiece. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
So you have 4 ISLOs, and then you talk about the indicators under each one of those. So when you talk about, for example, your professional and personal development, how many indicators are you wanting students to hit, and how are you blending that to your curriculum mapping and that faculty work, in courses, multiple courses, programs, all of that good stuff?
So there's 4 under personal and professional development. You can see at the top of Beth's chart here. So we have 4, and that's the kind of the process of our assessment that we're doing right now is we're going through and using the data that we're collecting from our rubrics in Canvas and giving them to IR to determine, do we need these 4, or are these 4 relevant for our students? And then we leave it to our faculty to determine in their courses, in their specific courses with their assignments, what hits when, if it hits at all.
Well, and we looked at social responsibility this semester, and there are some performance indicators in there we're not using. So a conversation that is coming up next is, do we need 5 of them if we're only using 3? If nobody feels strongly enough about those other 2, they're probably going to go away. If no one feels like, oh, this is the most important thing for me to measure in my class to show institutional learning, then we could go down to fewer than 5 if they're not being used. And if no one is ever getting a 4, we can look at the language in the rubric, because there was a line that I'm always citing that said, could withstand criticism by experts in the critical thinking. I teach a 2-year college. It's real hard for them to write something that could withstand criticism by a bunch of people with PhDs in biology. They shouldn't have to. They're at a 2-year college. They can do a great job. They should be able to earn an A, even if it won't stand up to criticism by people with PhDs in the field, right? So we're looking both at how many performance indicators we have, whether we need all of them, and the language within our performance indicators to make sure that we're not using them because they're too intimidating. Anything else?
Okay, so I know this is an English for communications students. Are your career and technical programs also working on your ISLOs?
Yes, yes, they should be collecting ISLO data, and we should be able to do curriculum maps for them. I cannot remember why I picked the English pathway to pick on, sorry. It had something to do with it being alphabetical and me being able to find it, and I was starting here, and then we decided we really only needed one yet.
So, 2 quick questions. Where is your mapping located? Like, are you all using software to house your assessment?
This map or the real thing?
The real thing?
Okay, because this map is on my computer. I think that's a Dana question.
Well, are you talking about mapping, or are you talking about our the actual spreadsheet of the actual raw data?
No, your mapping. So
Yeah.
we use watermark
Uh-huh.
for enter in our assessment results and to do our mapping from our course learning outcomes to our ILOs to
Uh-huh.
our strategic plans.
Yeah.
Are you all using something?
So we're using Canvas for them to enter the information in for, and they will be able to speak a little bit more because they're actually teaching courses. I only see it on the back end. But so they use Canvas to enter the score for assignments or whatever it may be for the assessment. And then what happens is I actually just, I guess I don't do it, but somebody does it for me, pulls the spreadsheet down with all of the information for that, and then I plug it into Power BI. So that is created, it's a shell that's created by our online learning person. So,
No, I understand. We do something similar.
Yep,
with connecting our CLOs to assignments in Canvas.
Yep.
And our OEL person gives me this huge file
Yep.
of all the things
Uh-huh.
that we have to break down and parse out and then make it pretty.
Yes.
And hand out to the different departments. So no, I'm with you on that. And then my second question is, how are your ISLOs connected to your strategic plan? Because I see that you all said you have your indicators for your ISLOs, so how are those connected to your strategic plan?
So in our strategic plan, we developed that first, and then we went to our HLC Assessment Academy and used the information that we gathered. Are you going to pull that? Okay. So our mission, vision, values, student experience statement all feed into our strategic plan. And so we created then the 4 institutional student learning outcomes based on partnerships, communication. What are the other 2? I'm drawing a blank right now. This is
Partnerships,
terrible.
communication.
Pathways. Okay. And then determined what we wanted those institutional student learning outcomes to be. And then our student experience statement from our strategic planning efforts drove what our performance indicators would be.
Okay, I'm not a teacher, so I understand that this is a really basic question. And if you want to answer offline, that's fine. I don't want to waste people's name. But, for example, if I'm a calculus teacher and I'm trying to measure personal and social responsibility, how do I do that? What do I do if I'm just teaching a bunch of students calculus? How do I get to, and if that's a dumb question, I understand.
No, that's
No.
a really good question. You should be teaching them that stuff in the class a little bit, like turn in your homework, listen to feedback, whatever. But what you're actually assessing them on for the institutional level is probably critical thinking, using something to solve a problem. So the way you'd fit into this map.
Where's math? Math.
I can't read that. Yeah.
Well, that's where math was. So math is just one little block, and your teaching fits into the student's overall plan. You don't have to assess all of those things. You just assess one of them, and then it fits into the bigger picture. So that even English students have to know that.
Socially responsible by
No.
No,
recycling.
you don't have to make them recycle or bring in food for a food drive or anything and then assess that. You just have to assess your one thing that fits into the student's whole picture.
Because the student isn't going to be assessed on every single one in one class. And so that's the point, if they come and throughout the whole program, they're being assessed in these different areas. But your particular class is only one area, one thing, because that fits in with what you're teaching.
That helps.
Yeah.
And we had the same question all the time.
There's a question.
Oh,
There's
no.
also one back here after. Oh, go ahead. You.
Okay, I'm not really sure how to ask it, but how would you all navigate fitting in your the 442, the 4 competencies, in with your institutional student learning outcomes? So how did, what did you do to kind of consider that? How they fit
We did a whole thing where we matched up our performance indicators with the competencies. Is that what the little ones are? In the core 42 to make sure that between all of our performance indicators, we were assessing all of the core 42 stuff. And we noticed that core 42 doesn't give a lick about personal and professional development, which our faculty really do care that our students are getting that sometime in their college career, and probably people at large expect that when a student graduates college, they have some measure of professionalism. So, but we're covering the other stuff, some more than others, but we can match the performance indicators up with the competencies. Yeah, there's a whole document. It's beautiful.
This is so obnoxious. I'm like, it's more of a comment than a question. But no, back to that question about where the curriculum map is housed. Since it's been kind of in a draft form, there's an Excel and our SharePoint that faculty have gone in and indicated, in this course, this is performance indicator, this is the signature assignment, what kind of assessment it is. But there's still some movement in that.
Right.
And I think that there is that challenge because in every single one of our classes, we could make the argument that we're doing all of these things. And trying to drill down, okay, yes, but that one signature assignment, that has been like a good kind of challenge to the end result, making sure that the students in their time at ECC hits like all of those ISLOs.
And if you were torn between social responsibility and critical thinking, hopefully when we have an in-service activity on this and I put this map up in January, it'll sort of sway you towards maybe, oh, we need some more assessment of social responsibility to actually make it all the way to the dashboard.
And thinking of it in draft form, because when we pulled this up in a seminar, many of our Falcon seminar is our first year experience, and a few of us thought, oh yeah, we totally mapped that as professional and personal development, and realized like, oh no, we didn't.
So the hash marks mean things that we're still working on in some way, or they mean that it's some kind of like, some of those are groups of classes, and I know you can't read them, but some of them are groups of classes, and so there's a light bar indicating that it'll hit something in this critical thinking or something in communication, because the English classes, the higher level English classes, tend to hit the communication performance indicators, but they don't all hit the same one.
A diagram that had the instructional co-curricular and administrative support. How do you draw from the co-curricular and administrative support into a structure that you? Is that it? It's further down. That one.
Oh, go forward.
This one? Yes. How do you pull that kind of information to support your institutional competence?
We use Canvas to collect most of the data, but there's an Excel option. So between the magical pulling of the data out of Canvas and the giving it to Dana to put into Power BI, the stuff that is outside a class and doesn't fit well into Canvas could be added.
And I would say from assessment of administration and support, we do our own assessments. So I do surveys using TrackCloud. We have Watermark for our early alert system. We have Informer. And then there's other softwares that I pull, but I do an annual assessment report and plan that goes to our Institutional Assessment Committee for review. So all of our different administrative and support services departments do an annual assessment. We all do a 5-year comprehensive review. Those documents all go to our Instructional Assessment Committee and then our Institutional Effectiveness Office for review. And then co-curricular also goes through our Institutional Assessment Committee. They use the same rubrics, and then we have a spreadsheet that marks what the co-curricular activity is and then what outcome and what performance indicator it meets. So a lot of our stuff is done via Excel and SharePoint and shared that way institutionally. We don't have a unified software that we're using to collect all of this data.
And I have a dream that someday a student would get their class data matched with their co-curricular data, with their, like, oh, I learned personal and professional development through this workshop at the Learning Center, but it's going to be a little bit.
And the co-curricular, we assess co-curricular by events and activities, and most of those, and there's a reporting system to do that, but all that often feeds into the of that discipline or program in which that activity mostly lives. So it's independent, but also fits in.
No, we're not done.
Can you talk about the next steps? So you've collected the data, you've made decisions on whether a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4 is your target that you're working for. What are the next steps to implement what you're seeing from your assessment results? Have you gotten that far?
Well, if someone thinks that their students should be getting a 3 or a 4 and they're not, then they can look at how they're teaching. Are they expecting students to write a really great research paper, but no one has ever taught them how to write a research paper? They just assumed the students would know it by the time they got to that class.
I'm talking more at your institutional level. The institution, you know, we're saying, oh, in critical thinking, you know, maybe all of our students, our bulk is at a 1. Are you thinking about those discussions for the institution says, now we really need to focus on how can we move critical thinking forward to maybe a 2 or a 3?
Yeah, and that really is where Power BI comes in, and it communicating with Aleutian colleague, our data information system, we can really drill down then into that data. So if a majority of our students are getting 1 or 2s, then let's look at the demographic data and see, okay, it's this population of students, it's this, you know, area, this high school, this feeder school they're coming from, or is it this instructor, or is it just the assignment? So we are starting to have these conversations, and those came out of our graduation from the Assessment Academy of now we can use this data to really start to drill down. So we've established the maps, we've established the rubrics, we've established the indicators. Now let's really start digging in there to see how we can impact change.
And we really do need more data collected before we can make any reasonable conclusions about demographics, because if the whatever demographic we're looking at is such a tiny bar, you can't draw conclusions from those 6 students. So we're getting there.
The other thing we do is, yes, we look at it, you know, we have the ability to look at this data by course and things like that, and they can kind of assess what they're doing within that course. But on an institutional level, you know, we do our colloquy every year and then our showcase. And that's where we focus on like one particular area. And we might take this data from Power BI and from Colleague and put it together, from Canvas and Colleague and put it together in Power BI, and just focus on those one things as a whole instead of by individual class. So those are the things we're doing twice a year to kind of look at it that way. So it's happening in the individual course and assessment assignment level, but then also that's one of the ways that we're looking at it institutionally. Which you discussed actually when we talked about was it personal and professional development, like kind of we looked at that and where, you know, are we collecting, is this important? If we're not collecting the data for this, is this something that we even need on there? So at that point, that's when we're looking at a particular category or really focusing in on those. Any other questions? No? Go. All right. We're done. 6 minutes early.